Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
All right, so let me go over a couple of Zoom things. So if you familiarize yourself with the screen a little bit, you should see somewhere on your screen a mute button. If that's clicked and there's a red slash over the microphone, that means you are muted and I cannot hear you. So like Melody's muted, Susan, Level Cross, which is all fine. You can stay muted. Typically what I recommend is that everybody stay muted unless you have a question or a comment, then unmute yourself, ask the question or comment, mute yourself back. That really, hey Lindsay, that really helps kind of cut down on background noise. Also, if you notice, some of you can see others, some of you can't see at all. That means that you have the record symbol is clicked, so you can, whether or not it's videoing or not, that doesn't, that's a computer feature. It's not necessarily an internet feature. So I would love to be able to see your faces, but totally optional. You don't have to have that on if you don't want to be on. And then while I'm going through today's Zoom, I would have you kind of just try to familiarize yourself a little bit with Zoom. It is really great, and hopefully we'll start using this a lot more. Well, obviously we're going to use this more, but hopefully y'all will like it as well, to be a helpful training. So I'm curious right now, y'all can see my screen. Can you see the Zoom chat that I pulled up or no? Somebody tell me.
I can't. All I see is February PD.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Okay, Lynn, I see, I guess this is Lynn or whoever at Level Cross. You can't unmute. You should be able to see a little microphone icon either at the very top or at the bottom. But if not, it's okay. You can send your questions. There is a chat feature, so you can send your questions, and you can either select to send to everyone, you can select to send to specific teachers or people that are in the participating in the Zoom session, or you can send them just to me. Whichever, that's fine. So we'll go ahead and get started. I am recording today. I hope to be pretty quick with my time and efficient. And then if you need to go back and watch, you can. If there's ever a reason why you cannot attend a Zoom session and you need to rewatch it, I ask that you do that. But hopefully this will be some helpful information for all of you. So let's get started. Today, for the month of February, was asked to lead PD on just kind of refamiliarizing, going over IEPs and ECATS, and what it looks like leading IEP meetings now in ECATS. I think all of you, for the most part, have been in ECATS, either writing an IEP or have already led a meeting. So hopefully this is not new information, but we'll go ahead and get started. Going over the overall nuts and bolts here, you'll see you start with the overall meeting purpose. For that meeting purpose section, you have the option to choose initial or annual review or addendum. The IEP meeting date, self-explanatory. The IEP start date, and you see I've got notes there, is typically the day after the meeting. The end date changes depending on the type of meeting you're having. So if it's an annual review, it's 364 days from the date of your meeting. All other meetings, the end date does not change. Nothing is new with that. Then we get to the student profile section. In the student's overall strengths section, that is where you truly talk about their strengths. This should be pretty concise. This should not be their present level and all the things they can do. Just what are truly their biggest strengths goes there. Parent concerns and vision, we do not type in until you are in the meeting. So you'll type in strengths. These two you leave blank. When you click save and continue, you will get an error box that looks like this at the top. It'll make you think that you can't continue without putting something in those boxes. But I would caution you, instead of filling in those boxes to go on to the next thing, I would just leave them blank. You will actually go in ECATS, you'll go back up to the top where it says EC process, scroll back down to IEP, and then go to the next bucket, which in this case, the next section is assessment summary. I can demonstrate that in a minute if you would like, but I know we've talked about this before as well. So then we get to assessment summary, and the only things that I'm going to say here, in addition to what we've already said, in this assessment column, you want to be sure that whatever, that assessment column should be the name of the test, the specific test name. If you have to include something multiple times, so here you see my example, I use the dial. Well, I used the dial 3 times. I used it for motor, for language, and for concepts. So I added those little indicators there beside the test name so that it's specified. So I just wanted to remind you of that. That assessment column there should be the specific test name that was used. Then your subject area is subject. You click that details box over to the right, then to add in the narrative in your of the assessment summary. For you all, each time for annual reviews, you would want to just make sure that you have teacher IEP progress, teacher data, however you want to word it. You want to update that in this assessment summary section each time. For the assessment name there, I would just title it teacher data, parentheses, social skills, or teacher data, self-care skills, or whatever. Make it specific so that you can connect it to different present levels when we get there. Any questions about that section from anybody? No? Okay. The next screen you come to is the source of relevant info. It will be blank to start with, just like I have shown here. You will click add or remove additional areas, and then you will kind of have to think through what's happening here. Most of the time when you're doing annual reviews, you are going to, hey Kendall, I see Kendall participating there in a unique way. That's fun. You will choose add or remove, and for annual reviews, you're going to choose every area the child has been getting special education services. No matter if they still need it or not, you choose every area. If it's an eligibility or an initial placement, you choose every single area the child was tested in. Then you'll get a screen that looks like this. So when you click that add or remove areas assessed, you get all these different options here. I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you all after the Zoom session. Let me see if I can go back. Let me figure out how to. Okay, can y'all, do y'all still see my presentation screen here? Okay,
Yeah.
So down here at the bottom in the notes section, you'll see where I added some tips and tricks there. I kind of gave a breakdown of what is typically selected, because that entire list can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Obviously, if you guys are working in it and you have questions, just ask me. But the acquisition and use of knowledge and skills section is the very first one there. That is typically what we've been using for cognitive functioning. So anything regarding thinking, memory, problem solving, complexity of play, attention. It can also be used if you have kids whose deficits really overlap. If you have a hard time being able to pull apart and say, well, is it cognitive or is it communication? Or is it they truly can't answer reading comprehension questions, or they don't understand. Kind of helps just include all of it together there. So I gave that. Then there's adaptive behavior for preschoolers. This is talking about independence with feeding, dressing, undressing, toileting. You could also, I've seen some of you select daily living skills, and that's fine. This is not right or wrong. My recommendation is to use the adaptive behavior title only because that's the domain of development that we're truly assessing and supporting the child in. So again, it's not right or wrong. It's just giving you some information about that. This one also goes into, there's a lot of things to choose from. So it can be overwhelming, but there is social emotional skills, obviously talking about regulating emotions, social interactions with adults or peers, sense of self, being able to express themselves, advocate for themselves, expressing their likes, dislikes. Are you working on them? Identifying who they are, identifying family members, all of that ties into that sense of self, which are social emotional skills. Any questions about those areas? When you are writing your transition IEPs for kindergarten, this might get a little bit trickier. So let me pull this up a little bit bigger. So you'll see there's, for academic concepts, there is a breakdown: math computation, math reasoning, algebraic expressions, number sense. I would probably just stick with math. Same for reading, unless you're able to really, you really are going to separate it. Again, there's really no right or wrong, but just know as you're preparing for your kindergarten IEPs, your choices look a little bit different than what they have in the past. I'm trying to see what else. I think writing, the only option is really written expression. I wish there was like a pre-writing option, but there's not. But anyway. Okay, so once you choose your areas of need or areas assessed, you get a screen that looks like this. You are able to reposition them, reorder them in a certain area, a certain way if you want to. So if you really want, pre-academic skills first, you type the number in that new position box in the order that you want them, and when you hit save and continue, it puts them in a new order. So that's what that screen is for. That brings you then to your present level. So each area that you chose, you then get a present level box, and you will start typing your present levels. In the slideshow, I did, for those of you that are new teachers, give a breakdown of what each present level must have, the criteria that's needed or required for compliance in each present level. So you always must include where the information is coming from. For example, according to evaluation results, teacher documentation, student performance. It doesn't have to be those words, but give where's your information coming from. What can the child do? So start with, if you're talking about social skills, then just talk about their social skills and what progress they've made, things that they're able to do well regarding social skills. Then go into their areas of weaknesses. What can they not do? What deficits, what needs do they have regarding social skills? And I want to remind you all, please be very detailed and descriptive regarding the level of support they require. We're running into some more complicated cases across the district, and when we have conversations with parents, we want to be sure that we've been very clear with them, whether it's hard to say or not. We want to make sure that we're being honest with explaining the level of support that child requires. So if the child needs hand over hand support, if they cannot walk in line without holding your hand, if they require, physical guidance, please include all of that in their present level. If they are not able to feed themselves, you just want to make sure that the child's IEP is very descriptive in explaining the extent to the support that you're providing in the classroom. Not just they're not able to play with friends, but do they go in centers and push their friends down, or are they, you know, being disrupted? You just want to be honest. That's what I'm trying to say. Then every present level needs that negative impact statement, explaining how the deficits impact them from interacting, participating, accessing their education differently than their same age peers. If you're writing a present level, or if a child was tested and they had average scores, they don't need specially designed instruction in that area, you still need that negative impact statement, but it right here in bold, I gave it to you. You can say there are no delays that require or that negatively impact the child's ability to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so still include that, but just say that there is no negative impact. Moving right along. At the bottom of the present level section, there's some additional information, any relevant medical health information that you can ask during the meeting. I typically leave this blank unless it's a child that we know, which in y'all's cases, it's going to be children that you know fairly well. So if you know of any relevant medical information, put it there. If they have any diagnoses, if they take any medications, you can put that information there. If you don't know, you can leave it blank and ask. If there is none, you can just type none. That's perfectly fine. And then there is this how the disability impacts involvement box. So what you need to do here is just copy and paste from each present level the negative impact. You can copy and paste it right in that box. So it does have to be in both places, but you've really already done this part. It's just copying and putting it again here. Everybody good so far? Okay. Then we get to special factors. I'm not going to go through each of these, but most of the time, the only special factors that apply to your students are the ones, is the one asking, does the student have special communication needs? That's for any child with speech and language therapy. So if the answer, if they have that, this answer is yes. Most of the time it's addressed with goals and services, and that's all you have to put. Almost all the other special factors are answered no. Towards the bottom, there is another question asking, are there additional parent concerns? Again, you'll leave that blank until the meeting, and then ask the parent again once you're working through the IEP, and then respond, you know, with if they have concerns or not. If a parent does express concerns, again, when you get to this section, then whoever is running ECATS and typing in ECATS live goes back to the first page and types in the additional parent concerns. So if they say yes, if they express something, that's perfectly fine. Just have that person go back, and whoever's writing your minutes, then write down what the concerns are at that point. Supports for academic, functional, personal changes or circumstances. This is your new transition box. So the question asks, what information is known about the student that will assist in developing an individualized education program? Here's where you can talk about the child will go to kindergarten and blah, 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 blah. A transition meeting will be held between teams or whatever you want to say there. But this is where you can now put that. At the very bottom of the special factors page, that is where you then answer the questions. Does the child need specially designed instruction in each of the sections that you selected before? So it's a quick yes or no. The ones that you answer yes to, you will be able to write goals for. If you answer no to any of these, then you will not have the opportunity later to write any goals. So you're answering, do they need goals and services in these areas? You just answer yes or no. If you get to the next screen and it looks like, oh, it looks like this that I have at the top, it means that you did not answer the yes no's to the specially designed instruction. So I've had some people call and say, I can't get a goal. I don't know how to get a goal in. It's because those questions weren't answered yet. If you have answered those questions, then it'll look like mine does towards the bottom, where you'll have the areas that need specially designed instruction, and then you'll be given the chances to click those under details, add or delete goals. When you are ready, you then will add your goals. When you click add goals, it looks like this. You have to click again. You have to click again the add goals button. Once you click that, you're given a screen kind of like mine looks at the bottom there, where you can start typing your annual goals. Again, for those of you that are newer with us, oh my gosh, I'm like clicking all over the place. How do I get out of here? In the PowerPoint that I'll share with you, I did include some more information regarding goal writing, what goals need to have. So all goals should have the condition, who will do what, with what specialized support, and how will it be measured. I gave an example there. So when shown a picture of the bathroom, that's kind of the condition. The child who will carry the image and walk to the bathroom, that's what they're doing. Given verbal cues, that's the specialized support. And then with 80% success of recorded trials, the measurable criteria. Real quick and dirty of goal writing. Once you have written your goals, you then have to, don't y'all like my goal? Really thought-provoking there. You will click this goal details, that green box you must click for every single goal. You will then get that list of questions. Is it related to transitions? Almost always for preschool, it's no. Assistive technology required. You answer that yes or no. Method of measuring progress. I want you to really think about that. You should be choosing what you use to measure progress. So if I were to walk into your classroom today and say, show me their progress, what are you going to show me? That's what you choose here. So if you use Google Forms, then the answer is data sheets. Like that is your data sheet. If you use anecdotal notes and you just write sentences and paragraphs, then you need to choose that. Don't just choose data sheets every time if you don't truly use data sheets. So you answer this based on how you will take progress and measure progress on their goals. Then the mastery criteria, that has to be a number. So if the goal is that they will do it 3 out of 4 times, the mastery is 3. If it's that they do it with 80% success, the mastery is 80. Hopefully that makes sense about that. Once you have added in all of your goals, the next section is specially designed instruction. You click again that add special ed services and then select the services that they need. I didn't choose that screen. I think you guys are all familiar with that. You choose whether it's cognitive, pre-academic, social skills, type in their times. Y'all have all been doing that, so I know that this is kind of a refresher. Towards the bottom, then you have where you choose transportation. If they do not require transportation, then in the describe transportation services box, you just type NA. If they do require transportation in that box, you'll type bus or taxi. That's it, just those words. You guys know if they are removed from their typical peers at all to work with you or related service providers, you've got to explain that, why you are removing them from their peers. That goes there. Progress reports, almost always you're going to check that little box that says a more frequent progress report is not needed. If you feel like they need a progress report more than 9 weeks, then you can explain why in the box, but I can't say that I've ever seen it. If the students in preschool, how are they involved? We do have to answer that, obviously, for all of our preschoolers. And typically it is that they attend a blended preschool classroom or they participate in a preschool classroom with other same age peers. They interact in activities. Sometimes there you can note the level of support they require, but you need to just explain how they are involved in the education program. Oh man, I keep doing that. Sorry. Describe the consultation or training for school staff. Most of the time, that's going to be not applicable at this time. In some cases, like in initials, we are adding in, if we're setting up a specific transition plan for a student, what that's going to look like. For your transition to kindergarten kids, it may be that if you guys talk about that the child needs to go over the summer and be able to walk the halls without students there, or be able to meet their teacher or things like that before open house, that information should go in that box. So don't just think it doesn't apply. If you are truly having conversations and talking about different trainings or things that may happen for that student, it needs to go there. The next couple, these are called buckets. I don't know who named them that, but you have to click through each of them. So even if it doesn't apply, like I skipped one, there's one way back in the beginning, the secondary transitions section. You just skip over that, but you have to visit each page for it to finalize in the end. So service goal integration, accommodations, those most of the time you're going to just skip over unless goals are integrated, and if speech is integrating with the goal, or if PT or OT, if they're integrating with goals, that service goal integration is where that's done. I didn't go through that for this presentation, but you can ask me if you have questions about that. The extended school year, this is something new for this year that we've not had to do before, but this does need to happen for all of your meetings. I didn't take a picture of it, but at the very top of this page, there's a little checkbox that you do have to click so that this page prints with the IEP. So just a brief summary of extended school year. Extended school year, services provided over extended breaks. Students are eligible, or we talk about extended school year for students when they have gone on a break and they come back and have regressed significantly from where they were and take a long time to regain skills they once had. So that's most of the time when extended school year is talked about. The other time when extended school year is discussed is when students are in a very ripe progression of skill area. Like if they are, like there's a hearing impaired student at Trindale, for example, I question if she's not kind of in this area where she's soaking up and absorbing so much language. Is she a candidate? Do we need to talk about continuing services for her over extended breaks? It's not often that we have that, but you don't want to just go through the motions and always say no for every single kid, basically is what I want to say about that. But for most of your kids, you are going to have no, no, no. And then you're going to get to this other screen that you'll have to choose from that ESY eligibility. You choose that drop down and you will check if not eligible for extended school year. For initial placements, so if you have students that are initially being placed, then the answers to these other questions cannot be determined at this time. If that is selected, then you again will choose ESY eligibility cannot be determined. The determination date, I recommend doing the end date of the IEP. So a student that's never received services yet, we really don't have data to show that they are or are not eligible for extended school year. But within the life of that IEP, we should know. So that determination date is the end date of the IEP for initial placements. When you're creating the IEP, putting in your signatures, we're going to talk about this a little bit. So you guys know the regular education teacher and special education teacher have to be two different people. The interpreter of instructional or evaluation results can be any team member that can go over the child's progress or answer questions about evaluations or screenings that were done. One person cannot serve more than two roles, so keep that in mind. The speech therapist, this is new information. It's not new, but it is new. The speech therapist for our preschoolers can sign as a special education teacher for initial referral meetings or for any meeting where the child has received speech and language testing or is being served by a speech therapist. Okay, so we have gotten clarification on that. And so meetings for your kiddos that have a speech therapist, they can sign as special, you can sign as regular, and then Jennifer, myself, LEA, and the parent. If they are not included in one of these drop downs, but they are a team member, then you'll select them and type their roles in the boxes. So, for example, Christy, physical therapist. In that box as well, explanation team participants. If someone's participating by phone, you also type and specify that in that box. Once you are ready, and you don't necessarily have to be ready, but I wanted to explain again, creating the draft IEP, creating that draft IEP just allows you to see the IEP as everything's been entered. You do not have to create a draft IEP throughout as you're working on things. If you create a draft IEP and then you go back and make different changes, you have to create a new draft in order to see your new changes. So sometimes you've gone in and added more stuff, but you didn't create a new draft. And when you're looking at your old draft, you're like, oh my gosh, it didn't save my stuff. But really, you just didn't create the new draft. So just keep that in mind. The draft IEP is what should be either projected or printed that you're going over with the parent in an IEP meeting. The live ECATS with the different buckets, that is not, the intent is not for that to be shown to parents. So again, either projecting the draft or printing the draft is what you should be going over in meetings. The final then is only created once everyone's all together, you've gone over everything, and you're ready to sign. You create the final. And I just went over all that. Any questions about anything so far? I feel like I'm going super fast, but trying to make the most of your time here. Okay. The last bit of what I'm going to do is just kind of run through. So actually, there's one more thing. I don't know. I don't know. I know a lot of you are not going to like what I'm getting ready to have to say. That's why I'm hesitant to say it. But Jennifer and myself have been informed that we will no longer be the LEAs for your meetings. I don't know what this timeline looks like and when this kind of transition is to take place. But the plan is that principals, administration at your school will start to LEA preschool meetings. With that being said, Jennifer nor myself are going to be in your meetings to make sure that your paperwork's correct or to lead meetings. Now, if you're new, we're not just going to throw you to the wolves. And obviously, you guys all know that I'm more than willing to support you any way that I can. But it is going to be very important that you do get your paperwork to me or Jennifer ahead of time to review to make sure that it's right before meetings that we're not going to be at, and that you feel comfortable going through IEPs and leading meetings. Again, I have many meetings scheduled between now and the end of the school year with a lot of you. I'm not taking those off my calendar. I don't plan to take them off my calendar until I have more direction with what that looks like. But that is partly why I'm going through this next section, so that you all feel more comfortable going through IEPs, those of you that don't or haven't had as many opportunities. So, any questions or comments about that? Caroline, you have to unmute yourself.
I couldn't find the button. So does that mean somebody is gonna train the principals or tell them anything about the pre-K paper? Because they don't have to check the paperwork.
Right. So that's why,
They're not really gonna know the differences anyway.
right. So that's why you're going to have to make sure that your paperwork's done and reviewed before your meetings.
Okay.
And I just noticed that says EKs or something, but anyway. All right, so I am going to show you this. Do y'all see my draft example here? Okay. So again, either printed or projected, you have the draft pulled up. This is a real IEP. This is an IEP that I have written. I have not had the meeting yet, but I tried to protect the identity of the individual all throughout so that you have just a good IEP example to go by if you need to. I've heard other districts and things complain about meetings taking so long, ECATS take so long. It really should not take you any longer than any IEP meeting did in CCAS. It's just, you've got to be prepared and kind of familiarize yourself with the form beforehand. Have your paperwork done beforehand and kind of familiarize yourself with the form, but it really should not take you any more or less time. When you go through the meeting, always explain the purpose. You start by going over then the child's strengths, and then you ask, are there any parent concerns? Write down whatever the parent concerns are. The person that is working in ECATS with you can then type in what the parent concerns are in the live format. Then ask them their vision. Typically, I say, what is your goal for this child within the next year? What are some things you would like to see? Then you go into the present level of performance. So it's broken down. This first one here is gross motor skills. I explained to the family, we're talking about gross motor skills. This is where our information came from. And is this an area that we feel like needs specially designed instruction? No. I give a summary of the child's ability regarding gross motor skills. Then I move into the next area. So you go through each present level as the form reads. You don't have to read it word for word, especially if you know the child. Just talk about their fine motor skills. What can they do? What can they not do? Is it an area they need support? Especially if it's an area that they don't need specially designed instruction in, I would not spend a whole lot of time going over that area. And continue through, going through all of the present levels. Once you've done that, you get to that relevant medical information section. The question here again is, how did the delays impact them in the education curriculum or following the general curriculum? I typically do not read that word for word to parents, but I say, we know that their deficits in A, B, and C are negatively impacting them from doing what they should be doing for their age. It can be a summary, as long as the parent is informed is the biggest goal. Special factors you could read over. Typically, I say the only special factors that apply to your child are special communication needs that are addressed with goals and services. I'll say they are not an English learner. They do not require assistive technology, blah, 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 blah. You get to the end. I don't say blah, 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 but you know what I mean. You'll get to the end and again ask, do you have any additional concerns at this time? They say yes. You go back and add them. They say no, mark no, and continue on. When I get to this section, I'll say we do not have to worry about this section because the child's not 14 and won't be during this IEP. So we just skip on right through till we get to goals. When I'm going over goals, I'll say, now we're going to go over goals. So looking at the acquisition and use of knowledge and skills, we want your child to be able to do this. For expressive language, we want them to do this. And I'll go through each goal. Again, you do not have to read them word for word, but you're welcome to. Once you go through goals, I typically stop and ask the parents if they have any questions about the goal so far. Then we get into services. I go through and explain the services and what they look like, the related services, what they look like. We get to transportation, discuss transportation, and how the child is involved in preschool. We can explain that We can skip over testing. They do not require testing due to their age. And then explain if they are removed from their peers at any point, why. Talk about progress reports that they're given once every 9 weeks, just like school age kids get report cards. And then you're either going to say, you know, they are not eligible for extended school year, or we don't know, kind of give a breakdown of extended school year. And that is it. Before I sign, I do ask and make sure that parents feel like all of their questions or concerns have been addressed, give them a chance to ask other questions. And if everything's good to go, then we finalize and sign. And that is the IEP. Any questions? Concerns, comments, statements? Anything not related to ECATS or IEPs? Okay, well, that is all that I have then for our Zoom session. I hope this worked well for most of you. Like I said, I'm going to share the video. So if you need to go back and watch anything, you're welcome to. I'm going to share the PowerPoint and the example IEP. And that's all I've got. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. I'm going to stop recording and end the meeting.